Welcome back to West Texas View.
Okay, we were talking about, he said the word, Dr. Brownbill said the word standardization at one point, and I want us to talk more about that because we're talking about global standardization in medicines. What are you talking about standardizations?
So we're talking about if research group A in America was to study a particular cell line isolated from a human placenta, and another group in Germany or the UK or Hungary was to isolate those cells from placentas individually in their centres and then work on these cells to see whether there's an effect or a difference between pathologies and normal health. Do we have the same results? And this can be very controlled by the manner in which we carry out those experiments, and slight differences can have a big change of effect between our results between different centres around the world.
It is critical right now. The question about reproducibility of the results are coming up in the central publications of such journals as Nature and Science. So the scientific community is very concerned about the reproducibility of the results. Exactly what Dr. Brownbill is telling us, that if somebody in Germany discovered something and published the results, but nobody in the world could reproduce it, you are questioning what is the value of these studies. And that's why what Dr. Brownbill is doing, his effort, such critical efforts for the quality control in science, making sure that the data which we are producing
can be replicated and replicated by anybody.
Yeah.
And
this makes it believable. Otherwise, there is doubt.
Well, so and it just keeps proving it too.
That's correct.
And you just have to prove it if you're going to say it's a scientific fact. You've got to be able to prove it. So this is really getting from the measurements to the terminology. Everything is standardized. Is that right?
Yeah, I think terminology is fairly well understood. I mean, there may be some slight differences, but I think we all know what we're talking about when we use a slight difference of terminology or jargon, if you like, in the scientific community. But the standards is something quite different. It's how you actually perform an experiment. If you take some reagents from one company to keep your cells alive and somebody takes them from another company, it could cause the cells to change their behaviour in different ways, and the way that they behave may therefore affect the results that we find from our experiments. So there are all kinds of different ways that are unknown in the way in which small changes could affect outcomes. But the real important thing about the network as well is to try to keep training happening in different places around the world, and to think about the future generations of scientists coming through as well, and make sure that in this process of standardizing things and cooperating globally, we also think of the future of science and the people that will be working when we're retired.
Yeah, and I know that one of the things that you do when you do a research project is you publish it in a journal. But what beyond that do you do? Because you have both said education is the key to healthy babies and healthy mothers and all of this. But what do you do past that? Do you lecture to doctors?
Of course, this is part of the Dr. Brownbill visits as well. He gave a brilliant lecture on Monday to our medical doctors, our community, obstetric and gynecology at the Texas Tech University Health Sciences Center in Odessa. So, and this is the inspiration for the doctor to be the better health providers, because if they understand what is the mechanism behind of some of the diseases they see, they will be the better doctors for caring for these patients. So it is from critical importance, education of the medical community as well.
Well, see, so this is just like a step process. You learn it in the laboratory or prove it in the laboratory, then you tell the doctors, and then the doctors tell their patients.
And then the patients and doctor are telling us back.
That's right.
And this circle.
That's a good point.
Yes. And
so now we've got a two-way conversation
Absolutely. And this is a critical, this conversation between the patient and scientists and doctor and scientists are now recognized very well by NIH and by the institution which was founded 4 years ago. It is Patient-Oriented Research Institute, which is funding now research exactly for this feedback, patients to the science. Because this is the one thing, if the doctor is telling you, okay, if this drug is good for you, and you're going home and you're getting dizzy, you don't like this drug, it's not your lifestyle, it's changing your life, so you need to have the mechanism to come back to the scientist and tell, listen, this is not for me, for the people like me. I would like to be happy, and this makes me unhappy. And this is exactly the way for the communication, which is now priority.
And this is one thing which I think is really important when we teach medical students. You must place the patient at the centre of all considerations, because it really is their health that matters most. And this is a professional development standpoint from the point of view of the clinician as much as the scientist, because if we think about where our funding comes from to actually carry out this research, it comes from taxation systems of the general population, it comes from charities. My research is funded in the UK by the British Heart Foundation, and also a charity called Tommy's, which is engaged with stillbirth and other things of that nature. Now this money comes to us annually, but it's only guaranteed because people go out and make collections at superstores, supermarkets, and you know, we're part of the community. And I think it's a really important facet for a scientist to understand that they sit within this community and we're not isolated from
But
it.
what you said at the very beginning, that the patient is what, when you're in the laboratory working on that problem, you've got to be thinking, how is it going to affect it? And then the doctor is thinking about how it's going to affect the patient and so on. And so that drives your whole work.
And now we would like also to expand it and make our community in Odessa aware that this type of the research is going on, that the patient in Odessa could give us feedback if they know this will be the international conference.
So you're looking for people who would like to be a part of this study.
Not just a study, but giving their feedback. It's also important to make sure that we are going in the right direction with our research as well. So this is critical. So that's why to speak to you here, it's also critical for us as a research community.
One of the things, though, that I find is the more people learn about how their actions, their communication with their doctor, how important that is, because the doctor can't read your mind. You've got to communicate.
Absolutely.
We're going to have to take a break right now. We'll be back and continue this conversation. Okay, now.
Stay tuned. West Texas View will be right back.